Alright, hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at how to perform better in the game. Maybe you've been playing for quite a while, but you think that you aren't doing quite as well as you'd want to be. So this video is primarily here to guide you in the right way, perhaps. But yeah, let's just get started first. Even before you get into a battle, it's really important to go look at your settings. Now the settings, first important thing is sound. Sound, I have everything on 0 except for other player engine volume. This is most important. I mean, we'll get to why it's important later on in the video, but basically you just have to always focus on enemy engine noises and have all distractions off. That makes it the easiest for me. Of course, you could have stuff like a radio chat and speech on. I tend to have those off though, because those just distract me and don't really provide me with any more information than I already know. What's also probably important is to go take a quick look at your graphics settings. I have primarily shadows on medium. If you want to see targets the best way, you can just set it on minimum. Also, tree range is on 0. Tree range affects when objects render. Yeah, it says tree range, but it also affects stuff like fences, which you can see here in the background footage. Particle density I also have on 0. There's no need to have that on. Grass range is also on 0, just so that when you're like looking behind hills, you can see people easier. SSAO is useless, so I don't have it on. Small object shadows, those just add more shadows, and shadows make it hard to sort of see people who are, well, hiding in shadows, unsurprisingly enough. And yeah, because if you have like stuff like global illumination quality on high and shadow quality on high, it really adds like a big contrast to shadows, and that makes it hard to spot targets which are potentially hiding in them in stuff like city maps. Also, I have all these settings here off. Shadows, advanced throttle, even know what that is. Heat haze just distracts me and it's not really useful. When you're in your thermal sight, what happens with heat haze is that it may like start to look blurry and stuff like the Striker, I believe, that had that issue. Maybe it doesn't have the issue anymore, but it was something that kind of made me turn that off. And I guess, stuff like this is also not really important for you. But yeah, I guess what's also most important is global illumination to low, shadows on medium or lower. And I guess water quality on low if you want to see torpedoes the best while you're playing naval. I guess another important thing to probably go look at is in your, not your game settings, actually maybe in your game settings, if you go to join already active battles, you always toggle this off, because if you toggle that on, you might join a bit late, and joining a bit late is never really good because then the game's already started and you can't get positions where you'd want to be, and you're also at a bit of a disadvantage in comparison to friendlies because then you won't be able to get to the caps early enough to collect them. But yeah, other than that, I mean, there really aren't a whole lot of other settings. I guess it is potentially important to bind some other keybinds, but I'll get to them later on when I'm actually talking about, yeah, those types of things. Now, the next game aspect I'd like to talk about is sort of awareness. Awareness can be really split into 3 parts. It can be split into sound, the kill feed, and the map pings, as well as just knowing your own tank and the tanks you'll be facing. The first part is sound. Sound, of course, is one of the most critical things in terms of ground RB, because with sound you can identify where enemies are, how close they are, and what type of tank they are. For example, the mouse has a unique engine sound, which it only has, as well as the, Panthers and Tigers, they all have like their own engine sounds, and to sort of differentiate between them will definitely help you if you're in a tank where you're not sure if you can go through the enemy. So if you're in something like, I don't know, an IS-3 and there's a mouse in front of you, maybe you shouldn't go there. Maybe you can go somewhere else and shoot him from the side, stuff like that. Also, sound can be used to scout through walls. I've probably done it a couple times in my videos, but if you've, I guess we'll see here in the background, where I can just hear somebody kind of go left or right to just kind of triangulate where he is, and then I'll just press the scout button on him, and yeah, it'll just scout him for me. Of course, it doesn't always work, but it's always worth trying to give your team a bit more intel on where enemies are. Now, the next most important part about kind of being aware in the game is to look at the map pings and look at the kill feed. Here in this clip right in front of us, we'll see that we kind of see someone in front of us, or just hear them, I guess. So what I'll do is, after a bit of thinking, I will place a ping on the map by holding down the Alt key and then clicking on the minimap on the bottom right. This allows you to kind of ping somebody without, I guess, showing a massive map in front of you, which may obstruct you from seeing potential targets. And as you can see right here, this tank in front of me has been deleted. It isn't exactly quite what I pinged, but it was probably close enough so my friendly kind of looked over there and realized that there was something that he could shoot. Here we also see a Tiger 2. Now we don't really want to push that at this angle because he'd just go through our side. So instead we're going to back up here And if you look at the mini map, you can see that now there's like a little red icon on him, and that means he's been shot, which means that I can successfully push him, knowing that he is distracted. Now at this close range here, maybe that isn't too useful since we can hear that he's been shot, but at longer ranges it can certainly be of quite a bit more use. Now another thing to look out for when playing the game is the kill feed. The kill feed gives you a lot of interesting information as to like what's shooting who, and you can see right here that on the map there is an AMX-30 1972 that just killed our friendly IS-6 on the cap. I guess now we know what type of tank it is and where it is, and later on in this clip here we are just going to kind of eventually get to pinging them, and when we do, we'll I guess kind of let our friendly know behind us what type of tank it is, or at least where he is, so that they don't just run in front of him and become a victim. However, this M18 here evidently doesn't quite get the memo, so he ends up running away, getting shot, and then we'll just have to advance here. We know that the AMX-30 doesn't have that stellar of a reload, so we're just able to push that and get rid of him and get on with our day. Now another thing to be aware about when playing the game is the capabilities of your tank as well as the enemy tanks. Here in this clip, you'll see a Type 75 next to me get annihilated by a Buchan 1C. The Buchan, as we know, has a really short reload, so we kind of have to get rid of his barrel as kind of as a panic shot just before he get the shot on me. And we also see a Yak Panther in front of me. Now we know that he can't really go through us unless he shoots a specific weak spot, so wiggling around does prevent him from getting an accurate shot into us. And we know we can go through his front plate because our 100mm is more than capable of doing that. You know, stuff like learning what your gun can do, what it can't do, is all things that you kind of learn with time, but you can also, I guess, learn that through the protection analysis in the hangar, as well as, I guess, watching YouTube videos to see what other people do. But, yeah, in general, I find that the best way to kind of find out how to face a tank is just to play said tank, because then you'll just keep dying, and eventually you'll find out how you die, and kind of learn from those experiences. You know, stuff like knowing where the ammo racks of enemy tanks are is also pretty useful. You know, so like the back of the turret of the Buchan or the Tiger II is, you know, a very typical weak spot, and is always good to know, especially when they're in front of you or there's multiple enemies in front of you. You want to get rid of them really quickly. I guess it's also important to know what your reload time is. For example, if you're in an IS-2, you don't want to hold W into 5 enemies. Instead, you want to kind of sit back and destroy them one by one, because your reload is really long. But if you're in something like a 2S38, where you have a 0.5 second reload, you can kind of just send it and hold W, and yeah, destroy multiple people with APHE, because you know that you have an extremely short reload time. Now, I guess another important thing to be aware about is maps. Map knowledge is always relatively critical when it comes to this game. Here we can see that on Eastern Europe, there's always like 1 or 2 people who try and make it across this bridge, and you know, we'll just kind of engage them, and sometimes we get lucky, other times we don't. In this case, we do. And you know, just knowing where people go at the start of the match, also knowing where you go at the start of the match, always is better than just holding W into the enemies, just because that means that you'll be able to predict where people go with, I guess, higher accuracy. If you don't really know what to do, what you can always do is just watch YouTube videos on people who play certain maps, or you can just, you know, try going after the capture zones and see what works and what doesn't, and as soon as something does, you can kind of just keep doing that, and eventually you'll master that plan. So every time you get at that map, you just do the same thing, and most of the time it'll be relatively fine. Now, I guess after we've talked about how to be more aware in the game, the next logical thing would be to talk about some really niche controls that I guess not many people know but are extremely useful. And the first thing that I'm going to talk about is the independent control of the machine gun. You can kind of do this to shoot down enemy planes or helicopters and even light vehicles, and it's really useful just because you don't have to turn your main turret to engage people, and that means that you can keep your gun focused on a tank while you shoot down an enemy plane. Here in this next clip, I'm going to be trying to engage this EBR. I'm going to kind of bait him to push by shooting the building, and then I'll just 50 cal him. Admittedly, maybe I don't do a whole lot of damage there, but as you can see, they do certainly get a bit surprised by it. And yeah, in general, it is useful in certain situations, especially when you're hull down. Now, the way you do this is you go to your controls menu and you select ground vehicles and then search for machine gun. Here you can see select machine gun, just point it to whatever button you find on your mouse, and then after that search for reset weapon selection, And with these two buttons, you can then independently control your machine gun and then free yourself from that control as well. So here, we'll just select the machine gun. As you can see, the turret is not turning, but I'm like controlling the machine gun here. You can at least attempt to shoot down this plane. Admittedly, we're not doing too good of a job. But regardless, as you can see right here, the turret is moving, the machine gun is. And then we can just reset the weapon selection, and now we're controlling the entire turret again. Now the next important control that you should probably have binded as well is the engine on-off button. Now sadly I don't really have any footage to accompany this, but basically it allows you to turn your engine off, which means that enemies can't hear you anymore, and that could probably be useful if you're like hiding behind a corner and you know, the enemy is kind of right in front of you. Turn your engine off, they don't know where you are anymore. They push, you shoot them, and they are rather unamused. Now the way you set this control is you go to your ground vehicles control menu and you just search engine. Here you have the option to turn the engine on and off. I have it bound to apostrophe. You can bind it to whatever you want, and just like that you can just turn your engine off, and once it's off then yeah, it won't be making any noise. You do however have like a little battery icon, and once you run out of that your turret traverse becomes extremely slow, so you do have to pay attention to that and not get caught off guard. I guess a different way of being stealthy is to just simply not move. As you can see right here, this T-55 doesn't show me because I wasn't moving, and yeah, he never saw me, he never knew I existed, and that is because I just decided not to move when I was reloading. Of course, it doesn't work always. Sometimes they do see you, but it's worth a try, especially when you're just out in the open. Now another important control to have binded is the squad ping key. Squad pings are pretty useful because you can use them as like artillery help, or you can sort of use a squad ping, see the ping on the map, artillery set ping, and also ping it on the map for your rest of your team. So yeah, you kind of get 2-in-1 with the squad ping, so always useful to use it. You can bind the squad ping key by going to your controls, going to common, and then searching set target for squad, and I have it bound to I don't even know what this key is called, but it exists and I use it pretty regularly to help me precisely coordinate artillery strikes as well as just ping people on the map. Now another important mechanic to take advantage of is binoculars. Binoculars give you a slightly elevated position over the tank, so it allows you to see things that you can't really see normally in your scope. And here we go, you can see that I just killed that TDBVM there by kind of using my binos to aim on him and then switching to my scope. Same thing here, T-72 that I can't see through my scope, so I switch to my binos, put the laser rangefinder on him, shoot his breach. After that I will just have to reload and shoot his driver port. And just like that, you know, binos are very useful. You can also use them to spot targets at long range and stuff like that. Here you can see me aiming through a couple bushes again, using the binos to sort of find where the target is, and then finally switching to the scope to, I guess, finally shoot the guy. Here there's also PT-76. I shoot his transmission, and after that we kind of just have to sort of look for him there in the binos, and then we'll just finish him off. Now there is actually another way to use your binos, and that is to kind of lob your shell over hills. Here I'm using the Centurion Mark V Avery to demonstrate what you can do. So here you're behind a hill, you can't see the T-62. However, what you can do is range find him. And as you can see, we'll just have to wait for that to finish, but as soon as we're done here, it'll give us the range, and now it says 450. So we do roughly 450, put the binos on the tank, and we just instantly skip to our scope, and there we go, it hits him in the turret. Damage wise, we can ignore that it didn't kill him, but you know, hopefully this demonstrates that you can sort of lob your shells behind hills despite not seeing the target in your scope. Now a really important skill to learn in War Thunder is to learn to shoot in third person. Shooting in third person allows you to have like a split-second advantage over your enemies, or at least give yourself a bit of a faster reaction time just because you don't have to recognize targets in the scope. You can see me right there. If I wouldn't have done that, I probably would have gotten shot there, and that wouldn't have been very nice. It also is cool, you know, you always see the muzzle flash and you see the tanks that's firing. Pretty cool, I'd say. But I guess this is also not the only place where third person view is helpful, because when you're fighting in areas with a lot of fences, what you can do is you can kind of position your camera above the fence and you can kind of shoot tanks behind it like this, where, you know, if I would have been in my sniper scope, I wouldn't have been able to see him, but since I was in third person view, I was able to shoot him. Here's a bit of a bonus clip for binos, I guess, but I could have done that in third person view as well. And here we go. Here's just another clip just to solidify my thesis, is that you can just, yeah, do that and nobody will be able to do anything. Now, another important thing to know in this game is to actually find out if you're in an up tier or down tier before spawning in. Now, there's one really good way to do this, and that's to see the spawn cost of your vehicle before you actually spawn in, I guess, in the spawn menu. Here's a bit of a table to find out what tier you're at. You know, I've sorted it to 0.3, 0.4, 0.7, and 1 up tier. I guess 1 is an up tier, 0 is a down tier. And yeah, I guess this can kind of help you find out if you actually want to play the game at all. Maybe, you know, maybe you just don't want to play in a full up tier, or to decide which vehicle to spawn in, because maybe you don't want to spawn in a heavy tank in a full up tier. Instead, you maybe want to spawn in something a bit more mobile, which can compete a bit better even at higher power ratings. Alright, so we're going to quickly go back to the hangar now to discuss another important part about this game, and that is crew points. Distributing your crew points smartly will definitely improve your gameplay experience, and I'm going to list a couple important ones here. The first one being is targeting. Targeting allows your tank to, I guess, the higher the level, the faster the turret turns, and the better it turns. I'll explain that a bit later on. But basically, as you can see right now, with level 0 crew, if I sort of max out my targeting, it goes from 16.8 to roughly 19 degrees a second in terms of horizontal traverse. Now, that is actually quite a significant improvement, especially when you're in battle. But what's probably most important is that the targeting quality improves. And to show that, I'll just quickly show you this clip right here, where I'm going to aim like slightly above, and you can see that the gun kind of moves in like a box form. This is with a level 0 crew. However, if you go to an upgraded crew now, you can see that if I move my mouse really wherever, it kind of also moves diagonally, so it goes both horizontally and vertically at the same time. That is not the case when you have a level 1 crew, so it's pretty important to upgrade this. Now, the next most important crew skill, in my opinion, is the weapon reloading. You can go find that in the loader in your crew section, and you can see that on the Tiger 2 105 here, it's even shaved off almost 2 seconds from the reload time. Of course, this is more effective on tanks with a longer reload, but yeah, I mean, it's always better to have a shell loaded than to not have one there. And especially when you're in a situation where you're facing multiple tanks at once, every second counts. That's why I find that this skill is one of the most important when it comes to ground RB. Now, I guess other than those two crew skills, there isn't really anything like too much that stands out, except for keen vision. You don't have to bother with this, forget about it. I haven't found it to be useful or really doing anything. Vitality can be useful if you know, like have a lot of shrapnel. Then it could be that if you're on a level 1 crew, your crewmen would get knocked out, but if they're maxed out, then they like turn red or something, and if they stay alive, could be useful. Agility just affects how fast your crew like replace. So for example, your driver gets knocked out, that's the time right here. Could be useful as well. And fuel repair just affects your repair time, so just really equally distribute your crew points among these 3 skills here. Tank driving could be important, but I mean, you know, it's not exactly crucial. It could maybe be nice to have, but I think these crew skills here are more important. Now, I guess for one of my final tips for today, we're going to talk about which modifications to research first. Now, they have actually recently added or changed the parts and FPE stuff. So what I would actually do is first research the tier 1 APFSDS, and after that I move on to parts and FPE. For anything that isn't a top tier tank or that has stock heat, I would just research these 2 modifications first, and then eventually move on to something like horizontal drive, depending on how fast the turret traverses, or adjustment of fire, laser rangefinder could also be important. But the modifications that you can definitely ignore are stuff like brake system, suspension, and tracks. I tend to leave these all the way at the last because these aren't really too important. Stuff like engine, transmission, you know, the upgraded APFSDS, those are more important, and those are also the ones that you should also be focusing. Crew replenishment also should be something that you should be going after, especially after you research the rank 2 mods, because that allows you to regain your fire rate mid-battle. Alright, well that does it for the most important gameplay tips I'd have for ground. Of course, those aren't really like all of them. Some are just too niche for me to include, like stuff like, oh, you can scout through objects like that. That's also something that you can do. And also, when someone is like helping you repair and they have like a breach that is functional, then maybe just don't pop smoke, because that just blinds both parties and that does not help anybody, and it just ends in a really disappointing result. But anyway, hopefully you have enjoyed this video here. I do occasionally stream on the weekends and stuff, so you know, it'd be grand if you check them out. Also, I just make regular YouTube videos, so it would certainly make me very happy if you would check them out. I'm sure you would be able to yeah, extrapolate some information from them as well. Anyway, that does it for me today, and I'll see you guys in the next video. No, editing potato here. I've actually made a Discord server now, so if you're interested in joining that, the link for that is in the description down below, as well as in the comments. But yeah, that's it. Bye.